Okay, so let's start now talking about the difference between two random variables, okay? So now that we've examined the sums, we can now get into um, the differences because they are done a little bit differently, okay? So let's start by looking at the difference in the number of passengers that Pete and Erin have on their tours on a randomly selected day. So in other words, the difference between the two random variables. Okay, because Pete averages 3.75 passengers, okay, Erin averages 3.10 passengers per trip. Okay. The average difference between them is just simply going to be the difference between them. So 0.65 passengers. Okay. That is Pete averages 0.65 more passengers per day than Erin does. So we generalize this result for any two random variables as follows. If the difference is equal to x minus y, then the mean of the difference is equal to the mean of the x minus the mean of the y. Okay? In other words, the mean or expected value of the difference of two random variables is definitely equal to the difference of their expected values. Okay, so that's really important. It is very, very important that you realize that the order of subtraction is super important. So if you had switched them up, then it would have been interpreted very differently. So just be very aware that it's important. So you don't want to understand it as negative 0.65 because then that would mean that Erin averages 0.65 fewer than or more rather than Pete does. So just be careful of that. Okay. So now let's go ahead and talk a little bit about standard deviation. So obviously this is where things tend to get a little bit more complicated. Okay, so earlier we saw that the variance of the sum of two independent variables is the sum of their variances. Can you guess what the variance of the difference of two independent random variables will be? Well, if you were thinking something like the difference of their variables, you are actually wrong, okay? So just because you are subtracting, we actually don't subtract the variances, okay? So even though the fact that we are we're finding the difference now, we don't find the difference of their variances. We still add their variances, okay? So important to realize with this problem. So the variance for our x was 1.1875, or variance for y was 0.89. The difference between these is not how you find it. Instead, despite the fact that we are subtracting, we still are going to be adding these. Okay, so we come to 2.0775, which is of course the same thing as we had before, and this should be D. And of course we know that's the variance, and we already had this answer. Because it is the same as the sum. So the square root of your variance is your standard deviation. Okay. All right, so we have defined several random variables related to Pete and Erin's tour businesses for a randomly selected day. So let's just say now that C is going to be, so this is going back for a while ago when we were talking about the amount of money collected by Pete, and then G was the amount of money that was collected by Erin. So we found a few new statistics, right? Right here. Okay. So now let's calculate the mean and standard deviation of the difference between the money that they collect. Okay, so Pete's money minus Erin's money collected. Okay, so the mean is easy because the mean is just going to be their two combined subtracted. Okay, so in other words, on average, Pete would collect $20 more per day than Aaron does. Okay, and then the standard deviation. Okay, so the standard deviation is going to be found from their variances, and we're going to be adding their variances. Right here, I don't have their variances; I actually have their standard deviation, so I'm going to have to square those values to get my variances. So 0.46 squared plus 1.6503 squared. And I end up with $53,954.07. Again, just because I'm finding the difference doesn't mean that I subtract, I still add. So the standard deviation then found from square rooting $53,954.07, which is $232.28. Okay, in other words, the standard deviation of the difference in the amounts collected by Aaron and Pete is about $232.28. So even though the average difference in the monies collected is $20, the difference on individual days can typically vary from the mean by about $232. Okay, and that is it for this.